I wasn't expecting as many people to watch my last video. If anything, I was maybe hoping to reach at least 50 views on it, but regardless, I wanted to say thank you for checking it out. It means a lot. I also wanted to apologize because this video is going to be way smaller in scope. Of course, I plan to make videos like the Stark one in the future since I loved working on it, but I also want to try a variety of things on my channel and want to get better at making videos in general, so I hope y'all understand. Anyways, recently I've been watching some anime, as I often do, because I hate touching grass, and I wanted to simply share my thoughts on them. I'm probably not going to do a full-on analysis of each of these shows in the future, but I still wanted to discuss them just because I like to shoot my thoughts out into the abyss we call YouTube. Okay? Okay, let's get to it. Shangri La Frontier is an anime built by gamers for gamers. The main character, Rakudo, who goes by Sunraku in every game he plays, is a trash game connoisseur. He loves exploiting bugs and glitches in terrible games. You could say he likes to
tear something down to its finest parts.
Yeah.
Build something anew from it.
Though, after beating his latest slot pile, he's recommended to play a quote-unquote god game in the form of Shangri La Frontier, a MMO with millions of players worldwide. Basically, WoW back at its peak, and it turns out he's kinda amazing at it. You see, this show takes place in the near future, so every game Sunraku plays is a VR game with full body controls, a lot like Sword Art Online. And thanks to his countless hours he's spent playing trash games, he is able to master the mechanics of Shangri-La pretty quickly. He basically blazes through the beginner portions of the game. That is, until he is attacked in an incredibly rare encounter with one of the 7 unique monsters of the game, Lycagon. After losing the fight, Sunraku vows to hunt down Lycagon, and possibly the other unique enemies as well. I actually like this hook, despite the fact that it takes a little while before this plotline gets established. It gives the show an overarching goal to reach towards and build some hype for potential fights in the future. Though, as much as I do like this premise, I felt like maybe there was a potential to have the focus of the show be on the broken games Sunraku has played. I think it might have been a more interesting thing to see, but who knows. There have been some episodes that have shown some of the other games he's played, and maybe the manga has more stuff like this in store. This isn't to say that the premise this show does have is bad. Like I said, I do like it. I just think it would have been more interesting if the show had focused on the glitchy, buggy games filled with exploits. To go back on talking more about the fights, overall, the animation here is pretty great. Most of the fight scenes so far have been pretty interesting and dynamic. But I'll be honest with you, it's not a world beater, alright? It's not absolutely insane as something like JJK, but the animation here is still incredibly smooth. And there's been several moments where the animators turned the dial up to 11. Episode 18 is a standout in particular. I also think that many of the character designs are pretty neat. Maybe some are a bit generic, but I feel that overall the use of color and certain aspects, like Sunraku's bird head, help them feel more unique. Shifting over to the characters, for the most part, they're okay. I think what I'm about to say just shows how much of a nerd I am, but I've often felt that some of Sunraku's inner monologue has been stuff that I would think to myself when I'm playing games, which has been pretty fun to see, honestly. Stuff like him thinking about how to best chain his moves together, or when he looks up stuff about the game online, helped to characterize him as this min-maxer who always tries to optimize everything about his build. Though, not gonna lie, I find it kinda cringy when he says stuff like, Also, my least favorite character is easily the main love interest, Rei. Her entire shtick is that she is in love with Sunraku, but is too shy to be upfront about her feelings. And he's just clueless about how she feels. While I usually like shy characters like her, here it gets annoying because she has literally no personality outside of being in love with the MC. Like, She fails the Bechdel test at every single opportunity. I guess she's a bit better in the actual game because she's like the strongest character, but she doesn't really do too much. So it's not that big of a plus for her being interesting. Though I guess I only dislike her character because I wish I was the guy. Leisai. The other leads of the show are thankfully a bit more interesting. I like Emil, the rabbit companion, well enough. She's gotten a fair few chuckles out of me. Pencilgon and Kaitsu have more going on. They're gaming buddies of Sunraku, and I really like the trio dynamic they create. It's fun to see them bicker with each other. You get the sense that they have known each other for a while, and know what ticks each other off. I especially like Pencilgon's arc in particular, since I think we can all relate to her getting emotionally attached to a fictional character. Right? The music choice can be a bit strange at times. I felt that the use of some songs from the OST were pretty out of place and took me out a little bit during some of the scenes. Oh, and last thing I want to bring up. I definitely feel like the show gets better during the second half, so take that how you will. The first half of the show is decent, it's not bad or anything, but the second half is actually pretty good. I'd like to think of it as the show sort of finds its footing. Honestly, as it's gone on, I have felt the characters and the story growing on me. Overall, this is a kinda turn your brain off type show. Just sit back and relax, you know? I also feel that if you're one to get sucked into the world of an RPG game like Xenoblade or Final Fantasy, then there's a high chance that you might like this one. Right now, I'd say that it's a solid 7 out of 10. Cells at Work is a delightful little show that once again proves that I will find anything way more interesting if you turn it into a cute anime girl. The show revolves around personifications of the various cells found in the human body. Each episode usually involves a different type of cell and takes place in a different part of the body. Usually, they'll have to deal with a different type of illness or injury as well. Honestly, I find that I don't really like the episodic format that some shows have, but here I actually think it works pretty well. So much so that I preferred it more than the few arcs this show has. To speak more on the characters, I actually really enjoy each and every one. They're the main reason I think the show is so charming. Plus, I really like the character designs. They're very vibrant and distinct from one another. I also like the fact that Red Blood Cell has a curve of hair sticking out of the side of her head, hinting that she's actually a sickle cell, which makes sense in the show's context. Speaking of Red Blood Cell, a little thing that I found interesting is that she is basically a girl failure character before the trope started getting really popular. Not saying that she's like the progenitor of the entire character archetype, the show came out in like 2018, but I just found it neat that she was sorta doing the whole thing before much more widely known characters finally got their own anime adaptations. I'd also like to mention the voice acting. I think that everyone here does a pretty good job at portraying their characters. Everybody feels fairly over the top with their performances, but in a good way. It helps with giving the show a kind of light-hearted vibe. Some particular highlights for me are the aforementioned Red Blood Cell, voiced by Kana Hanazawa, and Killer T-Cell, who's voiced by Daisuke Ono, who's friggin' Jotaro's voice actor. I mean, it's pretty fitting. There's a lot of similarities between them. Speaking of JoJo, both animes share a studio, good old David Productions. While the animation here is nothing really spectacular, I think that the overall art style is pretty neat. The visuals definitely contribute to the show's appeal, IMO. Also, I am not ashamed to admit that the show was genuinely educational to me and helped to sort of reinforce some things in my brain. I'm currently taking an anatomy class, and no joke, I would definitely say that Cells at Work helped me remember some things that I wouldn't have on my exams, so I have to give my thanks. I'd like to add that everything I've said here can be applied to both seasons 1 and 2. There's not a dramatic shift in quality between seasons, except for maybe slightly cleaner visuals, but it's hard to tell. Overall, though, I think that this is a good thing, since the show remains equally charming and fun all the way through. I'm between giving it a 7.5 or an 8, but right now, I think I'll give it an 8 out of 10. I also watched the Cells at Work spin-off, Code Black. It's a darker take on the initial Cells at Work premise, and it's done in a pretty clever way. As opposed to the bright and cheerfully well-maintained body of the original, Code Black has a bleaker tone, since it takes place in a less than stellar body. From psychological stress to vices like cigarettes and alcohol, to even a case of the old erectile dysfunction. I think we've all been there. This loops back to the name, Code Black, which is derived from the Japanese term black company. These companies are usually torturous to work for, from horrible bosses, long overtime hours, and abysmal working conditions. And this is represented pretty well in Code Black, unfortunately for the characters. Speaking of the characters, each of them are somewhat inspired by their counterparts from the original, yet they are changed to reflect the setting and tone, which is cool to see. Though, unfortunately, we don't really get to spend too much time with the side characters, which was one of my favorite parts from the original. However, in place of that, we follow a more focused storyline on the main red blood cell and the cells that surround him, and I think that this is done pretty effectively. The visuals of Code Black are also pretty well done, in my opinion. It's kinda like they adapt the original style to fit the more darker tone. Little side note, in the original series, most of the problems the cells faced were solved by the cells themselves. However, in Code Black, almost every resolution comes from either medication or some sort of medical procedure, since the body is horribly weakened. It's a nice little detail. Another thing that I wanted to mention is that while the voice actors here once again do a good job at contributing to the atmosphere, I especially like Kenjira Suda as the narrator. He's also the voice of Nanami from JJK, and his gravelly delivery really fits the show well. Overall, I think that Code Black is great at taking the concept of Cells at Work into a new, interesting direction. Even if that direction is just my body in the future when I decide to sit in my chair all day, gorging down fast food. Unironically, this shit was a little bit of a wake-up call to be healthier, which wasn't something I thought I would draw from it. I'd say that it's a 7.5, because while I did enjoy the original more, what's on offer here is also really good and enjoyable. Honestly, going into Spy X Family, I had a bit of a hipster complex due to the show's popularity. I mean, it can't be that good, right? So I put it on the backlog for a while. But recently, I decided to add it to the lineup of shows to watch alongside the others that I talked about in this video. And lo and behold, it's actually pretty great. Here, let me introduce the plot. Lloyd, aka Agent Twilight, is a spy tasked with getting close to a certain political figure in a country that rivals his own. To do this, he must create a fake family and have a child become an honor student at a certain school. Since the man he must stop is rarely seen in public, the one exception being a special meeting exclusive to honor students. To do this, he adopts an orphan, Anya, who happens to be a telepath, and he has a fake marriage with Yor, who is secretly an assassin. The show is a slice of life involving the various shenanigans the family gets up to as they each keep their backgrounds a secret from each other. Unironically, I think that the best way to describe this show is that it's extremely wholesome. The happiness of the Forger family is just really infectious. After pretty much every episode, I was left with a sense of calm joy. It's enough to make you go, alright, that's it. Where the heck is my state-mandated wife and daughter? It's just so nice to watch the Forgers live out their day-to-day lives and enjoy each other's company, especially given each of their backstories. This theme of found family, how each member of the Forgers have dealt with their own hardships, but once they find each other, they're able to sort of create a safe haven together. It's really such a beautiful thing to see. I feel like this theme is best illustrated by the first ED of the show, Comedy, by Gen Hoshino. The lyrics of the song talk about simply wanting to spend time with a loved one without having to make a whole thing about it. Getting together just to talk about stuff like how their day was or the weather, stuff that ultimately doesn't really matter because what is important is just being in the presence of that other person. It's so lovely, and the song itself is so great as well. I think it's able to portray this feeling within the actual sound of the song. It has such a wholesome and relaxing vibe, and I really love it a lot. But anyways, the anime doesn't just deliver on quality story. The visuals of the show are also fantastic. There have been several action sequences that just did not have to go as hard as they did, but they're greatly appreciated. I mean, what else do you expect from a co-production between frickin' Wit Studio and Cloverworks? Both studios have animated some incredible shows, and they have done an amazing job with delivering the anime adaptation here. Every action scene flows so phenomenally, and the several OPs and EDs of Season 1 have also looked really great. While Comedy has been the only one where I also really love the song that goes along with it, the other OPs and EDs each have such a great sense of style. Whether it's the simplicity of the first OP, or the raw beauty of the themes of the second core. Also, I know that this is really freaking like r/anime of me to say, but not gonna lie, I've gotten a bevy of reaction images from a bunch of Anya's expressions. I think that just goes to show how great the show is at being able to characterize her. Plus, besides a couple of things, I think that this show would be a great pick as an anime to show to newcomers of the medium. Overall, this show has just been chock full of charm, and it's an incredibly enjoyable time. I think that Season 1 is an easy 9 out of 10, and I'm looking forward to where the show goes from here. Hey, during the making of this video, I also decided to watch Season 2 of Spy X Family, and I'm happy to report that it's also fantastic. I like that Yor gets a storyline where she's the main focus, and it was neat to see the Forgers each contribute during the events of the cruise liner arc. Also, this ED is such a banger. It has a great sense of style, and the cardboard aesthetic is so fun. I don't really have much more to add about this season than what I've already mentioned with Season 1. This show just knows how to brighten up your day, and I love it so much. It's still a 9 out of 10. Anyways, those have been the shows that have got my attention for like the past couple weeks. But let me know what y'all thought about these shows. Was Shangri La Frontier gamer enough? Was Cells at Work anatomical enough? Was Spy X Family enough of an accurate depiction of a fictionalized version of the various political conflicts and acts of espionage that took place during the tumultuous Cold War era? Let me know in the comments below. Anywho, thanks for watching. Hope that you stick around and have a good day.